Hey, welcome back everybody. Welcome to the fourth episode of our Webflow optimization course. So in the previous episode, we've been covered optimizing our fonts, we've built our navigation, our header, we've talked about full width images, how to optimize those images, and we also covered HTML structure. Now in today's episode, we're gonna build our logos, the section with those 5 logos, and we will do our very first website audit using Google Lighthouse. Okay, so without being said, let's roll the intro. Okay, so just a quick recap. In the previous episode, we've built our navigation here and we've built our full width section with the background image. Now, in today's episode, we will build these sections with 5 logos, and before we dive into those, there's a couple of solutions right here. So because this section will mostly be inside the initial viewport, we want to make sure we display these images. So what we can do is we can have all of these images as independent SVG code and then add these SVG codes inside a grid system. And then other options might be to create image sprites. Now image sprites is when you combine together multiple images, so you save the request count. Now obviously in web, the number of requests you have, it's important, and a request is basically a file on your Webflow server that your browser need to access. Good. So because these logos right here will go inside our initial viewport, we want to make sure they're visible in the very first moment a client lands on our landing page. So what we want to do is we want to firstly optimize our SVG icons. You can see we have a lot of points, and all of these points are basically information. Chances are that this logo has been made using Illustrator tracking feature where you add an image in PNG and then Illustrator track and create an SVG image, but we have a lot of points, and every point is a byte of information. So what I did is I went on our website, and by the way, I'm gonna link this inside the video description. It's called World Vector Logo, and you can find right here a lot of company logos in SVG format. Good. Now going back, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove my Typeform logo that we used previously, and I'm gonna replace with this Typeform new logo. You need to do the same for every SVG you're gonna add inside your Webflow. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just view what we have right here. So look how many paths we have, and from the previous episode we've been covered optimizing our SVG logos, and we will do the same for our logos right here we have on the bottom. We basically need to combine all of these paths you see right here in one big path, so we ultimately optimize our SVG. So without being said, let me dive into my Affinity designer and start optimizing all of these SVG icons. And what you can do, you can skip at this point if you know how to optimize. Otherwise, please bear with me because this is important stuff. So I'm gonna start with thinking logo right here, and I'm gonna do Command A to open up my export assets. I'm gonna choose SVG. I'm gonna leave the file size unticked, so I don't wanna optimize right now my SVG. And let's just change our destination. So inside my homepage folder, I'm gonna do a new folder called logos. And inside this folder, I'm gonna export all of my logos. So export this one. And let's do one by one, okay? I don't want to right now export all the SVGs, add them inside Affinity. I want to do this really slowly so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to launch my Affinity designer, and inside my Affinity designer, I'm going to drag and drop my exported logo. Now you can use any software out there. For example, Illustrator will also do the job. So you can see that. Let's first of all hit Command Shift G to ungroup everything we have here, so we're only left with a lot of paths. So what we need to do right now is we need to combine together all of these paths. I'm gonna select all of them, and with all my paths selected, I'm gonna click right here, add. Now this will combine all the paths in one big path. This is important because in our SVG code later on, we'll only have one big path, which will also be minified in one single line of HTML. So with this in mind, let me copy, and actually before I would copy, let me do a double click right here and see. Okay, so it's right the I think it's looking good. Let's leave this as it is. We don't have so many points. So I'm gonna select my combined path. I'm gonna back to my Affinity, to my Adobe XD, sorry guys, and I'm gonna paste it right here. Now by default we will have the same size, so this is thinking, and let's do the same for Typeform. You can see that we have two paths that we need to combine right here. So Typeform, I'm gonna hit Command A to export, and I'm gonna export it. Same thing, I go to Affinity Designer, Command W to close this one, I don't need it anymore. I'm gonna go to Typeform, drag and drop it right here. Same thing here. Let's select my both paths again. Click combine. So we combine both of these paths. It's one single path. Go back to my Adobe XD and paste it right here. So with my Google Docs exported, let me go back to my designer. Again, I'm closing this file. I don't need it anymore. And I'm having for my Windows, I'm having a shell extension that display my SVG. I'll also link this application, this shell extension for Windows, so you guys can also see your SVG files. So as you can see, my Google Docs is right here. Drag and drop. And of course, I want to ungroup every group I'm having. Remember, every group is a line of code inside my SVG. So let's do Command A to select all the paths and click one more time, add, combine them, copy, and paste my combined path inside my Adobe XD. And as you can see, it's a one big combined path. Now later on, you can see that we have groups. So we will ungroup this logo because groups are also counted in SVG code. Okay, so we have all the logos right here, and we also have the properties like the text and the opacity level, and later on we will add a custom class to these logos and we will apply the opacity. We can even apply some hover effects to bring back the opacity, because micro interactions helps a lot in your user experience process. Good, so let's go with our first logo thinking. So Command Shift G to ungroup the layer, and I'm gonna rename my path to, let's say logo 1 actually. Let logo 1 to keep everything clean. So logo 1, right click, export selected it as SVG, and this time I'm gonna choose optimize to minify my SVG code. Let's click change, and inside my logos I'm gonna create another folder called optimized, and I'm gonna drop my first logo. So what I love to do is I love to obviously ungroup everything, rename and export, so I have all my SVG illustrations, my SVG logos exported, so I can then open up them inside Atom or Sublime Text or VS Code, copy the code and paste it inside an embed element in Webflow. So the next one is Typeform. It's going to be logo 2. Again, we export these, we choose optimized, and we hit export. Good. So at this point we have all of our logos, and remember, you can always combine them together, export as PNG, but because these logos are so important, they're being displayed in the initial viewport, we want to make sure they're visible when the browser loads the initial page. Good. So with this in mind, let's open up my optimized folder, and I have here all the logos, and I'm gonna start with the logo number 1. So right click, open with Atom. Now Atom is my HTML editor application. Okay, so Atom opened up my SVG code for the first logo, and I'm gonna go to View Toggle Software App so I can see my entire code. And if you do remember from the previous episode, we've covered the fill attribute. So I'm gonna remove the fill attribute from here, and as you can see, it's one big code, is one big SVG. We have no groups right here, is one big path, and I'm gonna add the fill right here. So fill equal, and in codes I'm gonna say current color. Why so? Because I want to change my SVG logo color from the typography menu inside my Webflow. I'm gonna leave the width and height as it is because I don't want it to skew or sketch my logo. I want to maintain its original size. I'm gonna select all of my code, copy, and then let's move to the Webflow. So with my code copied to my clipboard, let's start building our logo section. So select your body and hit Command A to open Quick Find and type section. And at this point, remember, this is just a Webflow component named section. It will not apply any section HTML tag. So with our section selected, we need to go to element settings, and under the tag, we're gonna choose section. In the previous episode, we've been covered the nav HTML tag, and we also covered the header. Now this time we introduce a new HTML tag, which is section, and section is basically used for div blocks that are sections of your site. So section, one more to keep in mind here, that you cannot build a section inside another section. So this section that previously was a div block, it's now with the tag of section. So in our code, it will not be div class equal, it will be section class equal. So with our section, let's add a class. So it's gonna be logos. Good. And if you remember, in our design system, we created a basic container. So I'm gonna drop this div block right here. I'm gonna go to selector and type container. Good. Now I also have some padding, I do believe. So let me go back and see. So I'm having a padding of 50 pixels from the top, and usually what I do if we talk about ridiculous padding is I simply trying to emulate the height of my section. So you can see it's 300 pixel. So let's go with 300 pixel for the minimum height. So with the minimum height right here, I'm gonna type 300, which will make my section to take 300 pixel. I also have a padding, which I believe it's 30. So let me see one more time. It's 50 actually. So let's go for padding, and maybe 50 is way too much. So I'm gonna go with 40. And I'll also apply the same padding from the bottom. I want this obviously to be even distributed. And what I'm gonna do next, with my container selected, I'm gonna drop another div block. So remember, don't touch your container at this point. And inside this div block, we're gonna build our grid of logos. So what I will do is I will add obviously a class. So this is gonna be logos grid, and it's gonna be a grid of, we have 5 items, which means 5 columns. So we have 5 columns. Now what else you can do is, instead of, if you know exactly that your logos will only be distributed in columns, you can choose direction columns. But because we talk about responsiveness, I don't know how these columns will be distributed. I want to make sure I have a fixed column number of 5, and I want to remove one of my row. And at this point, just simply click done. Next, I want my Embed SVG logos to be aligned in the middle in every cell of my grid system. So I'm going to choose align. So for the horizontal line, I'm going to go with center, and for vertical line, I'm going to also go for center. So my embed code is centered inside a grid cell. Okay, let's move next. I'm going to hit Command A to open up my quick find, and I'm going to drop an embed code right here. And inside my embed code, remember we have copied to our clipboard our first logo code. So I'm going to paste it right here and click save and close. And so what we can do at this point, if we wanted to control independently the color of my logo, we can add a class right here. Yeah. So let's just add, just for the sake of this case, let's add a class. So let's say logo. That's all. remember that this embed code, this element of the webflow, it's just a div block, okay? And because we maintain the size, the width, and the height of our SVG code, we now have to do one more thing, and that is to align to the center our logo. So with this class, with my logo embed code selected, I'm gonna go to display, set it to flex, and align vertically and horizontally my logo. Good. I'm gonna copy my logo, and I'm gonna choose my logo grid, my parent grid, and I'm gonna paste it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. So we have our logos right here. They live inside a grid. We can always change the gap between them. They are aligned vertically and horizontally to the middle. So let me go back to our logo 2, 3, 4, and the last one, which is Canva. I'm gonna drag and drop it right here on my item, and yeah, we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna remove the fill right here because we want to control the fill, the color of our logo, from our typography pane inside the webflow. So fill equal, and if you use item, chances are it will autofill you the attribute. Command A to copy everything, go back inside the webflow, double click on my second embed, select everything, delete, and paste the new code. Finally, save and close. Good. Now we know that we also have an opacity applied to it, and what I love to do, just add a little bit of micro interaction, is for my logo, let's add right here under the effects, we have opacity, and set it to 15 to 50%. Now on the hover, I'm gonna bring the opacity back to 100, and I'm gonna choose back the states none, and on the bottom you see these transitions, and I want to say, hey, wherever type of transformation or whatever change you do to this logo to the hover state, please apply an ease and set a duration of 200 milliseconds. And if we go to the preview, you can see that we have this really nice hover effect over our logos. Wonderful. So we have the logo in place. They're fully responsive, as you can see. Yeah, now you have control over different breakpoints for them. It's not a problem. But what I've noticed is we also need to apply a padding. Yeah. So I'm gonna choose my logo grid, and I'm gonna say, hey, I want a 20% padding from the left and 20% padding from the right. Remember, your padding should be even across your entire sections. So we successfully built our logo sections by using SVG code, and now the last thing to do is, let me show you how you can control the color. So because we have used that fill equal current color, we can now change the color from here. Yeah, so let's leave it as black. It's looking nice, and let's publish it to the selected domain so we can then run our first webflow site audit inside Google Lighthouse. Let me open up my staging server, and before I would show you how to operate with the Google Lighthouse, let me show you what we have managed to do so far. And now the first thing is obviously the time it takes to reload. Like, it's really fast, but let's see how much time it will actually take for our very first visitors. So for understanding that, for viewing that in real time, we need to go to network. And if you don't have the network right here, just simply click on these arrows and you will see the network. Now if we do reload, we see all of these requests that are being loaded. We see the site icon, we see our images, but we don't see our SVG. Why so? Because we added an embed SVG code on the webflow, and it's not a request. It's directly being loaded inside our HTML code and rendered by our CPU locally. Good. Now we have this disable cache, and I'm having a pretty decent internet connection. If I do reload, you can see that something is happening here in the background, but let's see how our website will load on really slow internet. So I'm gonna click on this online tab, and I'm gonna choose to slow 3G. Now this will apply a really slow 3G internet connection. I'm gonna do reload and let's see what happens. Good. So as you can see, we have this, if you do remember, we have applied to this header section a gray color, so it's still, the text is still visible while the image loads. Yeah, and you can see that also the font is being swapped. So if you do remember from our very first episode, we've covered font display swap, which basically replaced the font with a system font, and by the time it will download the custom font and add it to the cache. So if I do reload one more time, you can see that we have our logos because they're SVG code. We can have our logo on the top, logos on the bottom, and the font in my case is being replaced with Arial. Arial is my default system font, but if you're using Mac, it's going to be San Francisco Pro, and if you're using Android, it's going to be Roboto, or recently they switched to the Rubik font family. Good. So one more time, reload. You can see that users can read my content, can click on the button, can see all of these logos. They get inside my viewport, and it's looking really nice. Now, if you wanted to emulate how it's looking on a MacBook, I do believe it's 1280 by 800. And as you can see, my logo are visible right here. So that's why instead of using Sprite, instead of combining together all of these logos and exporting them as PNG, we have used an embed element inside a Webflow and pasted the SVG code there. And by doing so, we also have control over the color, and we can build different interactions like this really nice hover effect. When we click, we have full opacity for our logos. Now, that's good. We can see that our website have that initial page load, and it have all the fonts, everything we need for the user. Let's now click right here. Let me do this thing. I'm gonna choose back my online, and I want to leave the cache disabled. At this point, I don't have to save any cache. I want to see how my website will load and fill when I have my very first visitor accessing my website. So we click on this two arrow right here, and we go to Lighthouse. Now I'm using Edge, but Edge is built on Chromium. If you're using Chrome, you'll see the same options right here. So with the Lighthouse selected, let's make sure we untick the progressive web app. Well, obviously this is not a PVA, so we want to get our audit for performance, for best practices, accessibility, and SEO. And for the device, right now we're building on the desktop, so we choose desktop. And we have to click on generate report. Good. So our performance is at 100. We have the best practices also at 100, but our SEO is 91 because we have not applied any. We have not applied any meta description, meta title, and OG image. So let's take this step by step. First, we're gonna see what the problem we have with accessibility. And the very first is HTML element does not have a lang attribute. And why this is happening? Because when Google will translate your website, they obviously need to know what is the initial language the site has been built on, and we know this is English. So with this in mind, we go back to the Webflow, we click on this logo, and we go to the project settings. We're gonna go to custom code tab. We'll scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see advanced settings. And for the advanced settings, you see language code. We're gonna say EN, which stands for English. We're gonna save changes. Now you have here a list of all the language codes you can access. So we save the changes, and obviously we need to publish this one more time. So this is why it's important, guys. So you obviously want to do optimization while you're building and translating your design inside Webflow. This is super important. So let's go back to our staging server. Let's reload. Let's clear our previous Lighthouse audit and click one more time generate report. Wonderful. You can see that we solved that problem with the lang code. Yeah, but let's have a look. So we solved the problem with the lang code, but we still have links do not have a descriptive name. Yeah, and this is happening because every time you build the link block, you need to have text inside, so assistive technologies can know exactly what this link is about and what that link will do. And if we click right here, we can see that our logo does not have descriptive name. So that's really simple to add them. So wherever time you'll have this problem, this issue that links do not have a descriptive name, what you need to do is, first of all, let me go to the designer. So first of all, you want to make sure that inside that link block you have a text block. And if we click right here, we can see that we have a text block that if we switch back to the display block, it says back to homepage. But still Google somehow do not see this back to home page. So what we need to do, we need to select our link block, this brand. We need to go to settings. In the custom attributes, you want to click on the plus and you want to type area label. Now area, it's a technology, it's a feature, it's a, I would say it's an attribute used by assistive technologies, those for example screen readers, or for people that have problems with vision, yeah. And we want to type a real label, and then in the value we want to type what this link is about. So we're gonna say back to homepage. We're gonna click save, and we will publish one more time our website. And yeah, you can go ahead and Google area label and what it means. We have different things like area role, drop down, area landmark. There's a lot of this area features. So let me go back, and I hope I pronounced this right. I think it's area or area. I don't know exactly how, but I know that this will solve our problem. So let's reload our staging server. With our staging server reloaded, let's clear our past audit and click one more time on generate report. So as you can see, accessibility 100%. We don't have that link do not have descriptive name. That's simply because if we do inspect our link block, so it's right here, you can see that we have this area label back to homepage. Yeah. Now, if you want to even further to see how your website feels in terms of accessibility, what you can do, there's a really nice website out there, which I will link in the video description. It's called WebAim, webAim.org. And right here, what you can do is, first of all, you have this contrast checker, which is insane, which is really great. And then what you also have, so under the resources, you can check, let me see, tools, accessibility evaluation tools, this one, Wave. Yeah. So we click on Wave, and what Wave does is it basically analyzes the health of your accessibility. So we're gonna go back to our landing page. We're gonna copy the URL, paste it right here, and do a small WebAim Wave evaluation. And you can see that we have area label. We don't have any issues, but we have contrast issues. Yeah, and we have a contrast issue right here, and we don't have issues with the structure of our web page. So we have H2, H3, we have sections, everything, it's looking great, it's feeling great. So this is basically how assistive technology would see your site. Let's solve this SEO problem. So you can see, guys, this confetti, and yeah, you can see that if we view the trace, at the very moment, the very first byte the website loads, we can see the image, we can see the text. So it's really great. Now I think we have one more thing here. Image elements do not have explicit width and height. And yeah, well, this is this thing right here with the Webflow badge. Now, if you will upload this on a live server, you'll not have this problem. So when you add the hosting, you can toggle this off, display made in Webflow, and you'll not have problem with this logo right here, this small logo. Document does not have a meta description. So I already created the meta description. So right here, I'm using metatags.io. So what I'm gonna do, let me copy the description, and yeah, guys, I'm gonna have all of these links inside the video description. So let me copy this, let me go back, let me click on designer, and in a moment we're gonna add our meta description. So it's really easy to add a meta description. You click on pages, you have the home, we click on this cog icon, and where we have meta description, we just paste the meta description. Now I love metatags.io because it tells you exactly the limit and how it will look inside different. It tells you how it's gonna look on the Google, how it's gonna look on the Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And plus on top of that, it's free. I'm gonna also copy my title and paste it right here. Now if you do search engine optimization, keywords, all of that, you can definitely have keywords right here. At this point, I'm just worried about getting 100% score in Google Lighthouse. And now finally, what I want to do is I want to add an open graph image. So as you can see, meta tags say, hey, the recommended size is 1200 by 628. So I opened up my Affinity photo. I've created a file, I've created a project with the same size, and I've dropped just this stock image we're using in our header. So let's go with File, Export. I'm gonna export this as JPEG, Export. And remember that this OG image, it's still a file the browser will need to access and will count as a request. I'm gonna save it under my homepage folder, OG image. Okay, and then every image should be optimized. So I'm gonna open up my compressor IO tool, and I'm gonna drop my image right here. So homepage, this is my open graph image, drag and drop. Yeah, so from 300 kilobytes we went all the way down to only 33 kilobytes. Let's download and replace our new OG image. So save as and OG image. Let me close this Wacom pane. OG image, save, replace, yes. Let's go back to the Webflow. Let's click on save. So we apply these changes, and then let's click on assets, and let's see folders. We have our home page, and let's expand these. So home page, and I'm gonna click upload, and I will upload my open graph image right here. Now once this is uploaded, you can hover and click on this cogwheel and click on this external link, which will open up your image in a new tab. But lately Webflow also added to copy the asset link to clipboard. So I'm gonna copy my asset link to the clipboard. I'm gonna exit my assets panel, and I'm gonna go to my page settings, and where it says open graph image URL, I'm gonna paste it right here. Wonderful. Let's save. Let's publish our changes and do, for the last time, one more Google Lighthouse audit. So let's wait a second. Voila, we have our confetti. So that's why it's super important, guys, to make sure you do optimize your site as you are building out your Webflow project. So in today's episode, we've been introduced a new HTML tag, which is section, and we also talked more about Embed SVG code. We saw how to control the color, we know how to control the opacity, and we also know right now that Embed SVG code, it's not counted as a request, and this means it will help us with our site speed. Okay, so we finally also did our very first Google Lighthouse audit, and we managed to fix a couple of issues there. We tested our website using WebAim Wave accessibility tool and see how accessibility software see our website. And then finally we had this confetti effect in our Google Lighthouse, which kind of every time it makes me so much happy. Okay, so guys, I hope this video was super informative for you. So if you have any questions, remember I'm always having an FAQ section in my video description. You'll also have all the links we have been used, all the tools. You'll have them inside the video description. Now finally, in the next episode, we are gonna cover our free boxes with free features. We're gonna talk more about optimizing our SVG illustrations. We'll start probably building more great stuff inside. And if you wanted to simply follow my work and be in touch when the new video uploads, make sure you like this button. That would mean a lot to me. And make sure you do subscribe and click on that notification bell. Now, a lot of you know that notification bell will give you a push notification on your phone when I'm uploading my next video, which will be super soon. Alright, thank you one more time for watching this amazing episode of Optimizing a Webflow Site. I wish you all the best. Love you all. Bye bye.